but I work on a team called the art department, and we kind of do a lot of work with the brand and the art direction of YouTube. So we have a lot of different people on our team. We have visual designers who, you know, kind of think about the colors and the layout of the products and apps that we build. And then we have motion designers who design like the interactions and how things move around. And then we have illustrators who, you know, they make all the little doodles, and like whenever you need like a joyful kind of experience that's more artistic and just kind of illustrated feeling. And we also have videographers and copywriters. So my team is really like varied in what they do every day, which is really cool because I get to learn a lot about all those other disciplines and not just code, you know? I always felt like I didn't necessarily want to just be immersed in code all day. I studied journalism in college as well as computer science. So I was always thinking about communication and storytelling and art kind of stuff instead of just like straight code. So that's a little bit about my background.
Before we go into Pearl Hacks, I think one of the things that would be very helpful if you share is that the idea of like design within Google, and like how product design and the empathy, all of that is really important, and how your background in journalism has helped you with that. If you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So design at Google, our philosophy is that if you put like the user's needs first, the product will be successful every time. So we do a lot of research. We have a whole team of user researchers that, you know, they think about the psychology of how a person thinks about using the product and how they feel when they use it. And they do a lot of talking to people about like what is causing them trouble in the product and what things they like. And so we do a lot of that like constantly, and that's kind of the basis for everything that we do. And then that kind of information gets passed along to visual designers and product designers. Product designers being like people who think about like all the features and the end-to-end experience, and visual designers thinking more about like how it looks. And they work together to figure out how to adapt the product based on the research that's been collected. And then I'm actually a UX engineer, so UX stands for user experience. So I do back-end work, but my main priority is syncing with the designers and making sure that the front-end experience is able to be what they envision it in, like when they're like making mocks and designs. So because sometimes you can have a disconnect between what the designers think they want and then what the engineers are able to build. So I do a lot of bridging that gap.
Okay, awesome. So far, does anyone have any questions about like what Maegan just shared? Any questions about design? Okay, so I'm opening a Google Doc where you can like start adding the questions. Meanwhile, Maegan, if you can talk a little bit more about your experience starting Pearl Hacks, like how you got started, and you know, where did you find like that kind of like inspiration and courage to be able to like start something so unique, and how like things fell into place. If you could just tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So when I graduated from high school, I had no idea what computer science was, or like I didn't know that code was a thing that was making our computers work. And I got to college, and I started studying journalism, and one of my professors was like, you really ought to learn how to code because you like enjoy math, and it'll be like a really useful tool for the future. So I took a few computer science classes, and I didn't really like my computer science classes. But I had an internship after my sophomore year at Microsoft, and that kind of gave me a taste of what working in the tech industry was like, and how that was different from studying computer science. And after that, I felt like working in the industry was something I wanted to do, even though my computer science classes seemed kind of boring compared to my journalism classes, where we were like making things and we could see the impact of the stories we were telling on people. And in journalism school, we did all kinds of things. Like I had to take a videography class, I had to take a writing class, I had to take an editing class, and a law class. They make you study politics. Like journalism was so diverse in what we studied, it felt more interesting. But I felt like I could have a lot of impact and influence as a software engineer in the industry. I liked the industry of tech more than journalism, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess, do you have any advice for people who are aspiring engineers, or they're aspiring to like work at a company like Google, especially because let's say in a place like Bangladesh, they don't really come to recruit, but at the same time, a lot of the women that we have, like they're just some like badass coders, and they can do they're doing amazing things even without let's say seeing what the end goal would be, like whether that's gonna help them get like some fancy jobs somewhere. So if you give them a little bit more advice, first of all, how to develop a mindset that allows people to succeed as a software engineer, and how they can prepare themselves for careers in a place like Google, or just in software engineering in general.
Yeah. First of all, I think Google is a pretty global company, and it's really awesome that there are offices all over the world. I haven't gotten to visit nearly as many of them as I would like to. But I think the biggest thing that I didn't learn in school, in computer science school, but I think is really important, is just collaboration. And I think that if you have a really collaborative spirit, then you will make the connections globally that you need to make in order to be successful. And I think it's really easy to feel like networking and reaching out to people and talking to strangers is like a really scary, and it takes like a lot of energy to do that. But I think it's potentially the most valuable thing you can do. Other than, teaching yourself through like classes online and stuff. It sounds like you guys are already killing it on like learning and growing that way. But computer science, it's so collaborative,
Yeah, one of the things I think our fellows are doing, and we encourage them to do, is reach out to each other and collaborate. Like I said, some of them has more of a event planning experience and problem analysis expertise, and others are badass coders and Android. So this collaborating is just for them to be able to collaborate. It's just the possibilities of what can come out of it is just very, very exciting. And even a lot of them actually are very driven in the sense that they have started taking coding classes online, and they have just finished the the project Euler with 200 questions on Java, or even the UVA project. So I just it's just so inspiring for a lot of our fellows, or for me, looking at all of these fellows, is that how they have just so much passion and so much motivation to just improve themselves. So we have some questions that we're getting from our fellows. The first question is did you have an internship at Google before joining Google?
Yes, I interned at Google between my junior and senior year of college. I interned in the Boston office up in Massachusetts, and it was really fun. I had a great experience. I was on a research team that did data visualization for kind of unique use cases. So they thought about a lot of different problems. There's a lot of PhDs and academic people, and I didn't like that part of it as much. I like where I am now more because I can identify with the other people I work with more. But it was really fun. Definitely recommend interning at Google.
Yeah.
If you can.
Speaking of interning at Google, their next question is like, how did you land an internship at Google and Microsoft?
Yeah, it was really lucky for me. I always had this attitude of like wanting to find out what was out in the world as soon as I could. So I started going to career fairs at my university very early on. So I was like, as a sophomore, I went to the career fair. I don't know. It's a little different because like you say, like we had access to the recruiters, but there was a recruiter from Microsoft there, and I didn't really know anything about talking to recruiters, or like I look back at what my resume looked like back then, and it was just like terrible. But I walked up to him and like gave him my resume and didn't think much about it, and they called me later and intern in this program for younger students. It was for people who are either freshmen or sophomores in college. And if you're young enough, I definitely would say like look for those programs and apply to them, because they tend to look more for, you know, your potential as a person and not as much at like where you are technically. Because that's the whole purpose of the program, is to like get those people who have a lot of potential into the pipeline early. So that was kind of how I landed Microsoft, and I felt like I needed to do that before I could get the internship at Google, because I also applied to Google at that time and they rejected me. So I came back the next year and applied to Google, and I kind of always knew that I wanted to work at Google, so I had already established relationships with our school recruiter, and I kind of was trying to learn everything I could about the company. I was like an expert on everything Google.
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of Google, like I guess why Google? Since you said that you always wanted to work at Google, and what's like unique, like what's Googliness? That's something I hear about a lot. Like something that's just very unique to Google. If you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think Googliness means different things to different people, but for me, it's really about being open and collaborating openly. So at Google, like we can see everyone's calendars and we can see all of the code and we know what everyone's working on. And that allows us to really understand the impact that our company is having and be excited about that. But it also gives you the opportunity to like volunteer your time to help out other people and other projects and initiatives that you think are really important. So we kind of say like Googlers vote on what we should be working on by like moving around and working on it. There's a lot of opportunities to just kind of like pitch in where you're needed that you aren't necessarily required to do, but it's kind of, you know, that's just part of being googly. Is like you're excited about something, so you do it.
Yeah, there's this like 80-20 rule, right? So like once you like kind of finish your own project, you find like set aside some time and then find what else you can contribute to. I've heard, yeah. So the next question we have is like, I guess, how did you find the motivation or skill to pursue your career that demands high, almost expert coding skills? Given that you didn't only want to do coding, like how did you, I guess, develop like really good coding skills? If you have like an advice for that, and how you had the motivation to do that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I definitely wouldn't say that I was the best software engineer in the world or anything. Because I was double majoring in journalism, my strength was definitely more in my interdisciplinary nature of my skills than like my expert skills in any specific area. But I was able to learn quickly. And I think that's the most important thing really as a young software engineer, because you can't know everything. And it's almost impractical to expect that you would have enough time to learn everything. But if you like have a general level of competence and ability to learn, then once you're in a job and you need to learn a specific thing for your job, you can do it quickly enough to still have an impact, you know?
Yeah.
So I've picked up like 3 new languages since I started at Google a year ago, that I hadn't ever written in before. And it was much easier than I expected it to be, just because at this point I've learned, I'm good at learning, you know?
Yeah, that's the other thing, like really encourage, like in terms of, in order to like take ownership of education, the most important skills probably is like learning how to learn. And that's really what we like take away from college, is like not just like those like actual content, but more just learning how to learn and adapting to new circumstances. So going off of the journalism aspect of your like a specialty, if you could, this is something you touched upon, like how journalism really helped you with communication design and like design in general. So can you give us like a concrete example of a project where journalism skills really helped you, as well as like maybe throughout the years, how journalism like gave you that edge?
Yeah. Well, so when I was in journalism school, my concentration was in design. So most of my design training comes from my journalism curriculum, and that helps me talk to designers every day. Like I definitely use those skills every day. I think an example of a project, well, there are so many projects that I did in journalism school that were coding projects. But one thing is, when you think about who your user is, like journalists are always thinking about who their audience is. You want to use vocabulary that your audience will understand. You want to give background information if needed. And there's a lot of like thinking about who you're writing for, who you're telling the story to. And that's something that designers use every day as well. Like you constantly want to be thinking about that when you're doing a user-centric kind of approach. And I think a lot of art schools, you don't have to think about that as much, because in art schools, you're just making like kind of abstract art kind of things. And it's not as much about, more about creative expression. I'm all for creative expression. That's why I'm an engineer, not a PM. But I think definitely my in journalism school, we did a lot of information design as well, and a lot of like data visualization and figuring out how to communicate complex data to people who don't know how to work with data was one of the challenges I think really overlaps with computer science.
Great. So the next question we have is, do you have a personal philosophy when it comes to designing a software or an app? And if you can talk about, like, say, like maybe the experience of like designing for Pearl Hacks. Do you have a particular?
I did all of the design and code for like the Pearl Hacks website and the brand. And I think, it was a little bit discombobulated the first year because I was so new to everything and so overwhelmed by everything I needed to do. But the second year I thought more about it and really trying to like have the brand reflect women but not be too girly, and have it like not be too specific to any kind of specific background that people might have, because I don't want to be intimidating or like exclusive by like putting just like a picture of somebody up there and then people are like, that's not me, I don't identify with that. Because the most important thing I think for Pearl Hacks was I wanted all women to identify with the event and like feel like it was for them. Because I feel like that was one of the challenges of hackathons in general, was that women felt like the events weren't for them. So, and when I was thinking about the brand of Pearl Hacks, I thought a lot about how to make it as inclusive as possible, but still something that every individual could relate to.
Now I have to say, like, Pearl Hacks hands down is my favorite hackathon, and I just really felt that, normally with other hackathons, you don't really see a sense of like purpose as much. Hack Duke has this purpose of like coding for good, I absolutely love it. But Pearl Hacks, like, I remember I built my first Android app there just by learning from like a crash course, like overnight. And then So that was just like a great experience. Like not only like there were so many like mentors, both male and female, who were willing to help out, but it's just the whole like feel of Parhaks. It was like just my hands down my favorite hackathon experience. So the other questions we have is that what does it feel like being a female software engineer within Google, and the experience is just like being a software engineer in general? Like just being a female, does it kind of contribute to any particular experiences or anything like that?
Yeah, for the most part, it's great and it's fun and it's awesome. I feel like in some ways being a woman on the team allows me to contribute in unique ways. And for the most part, my teammates have always appreciated that unique contribution. I think for me personally, I wasn't really raised in a culture, like my family didn't have a lot of strict ideas about gender roles.
Yeah.
So I think more than some of my friends that I know, the whole gender ratio thing doesn't affect me as much. I was raised by my like single father, so like I'm very comfortable being around middle-aged men and like having conversations with them, and just like that doesn't really faze me as much as some people. So I think in a lot of ways, like the way I was raised helps me not be as affected, because I know some people certainly are more affected than me.
Yeah.
But I haven't ever really felt like there was aggression directed at me specifically.
Yeah.
I've definitely had conversations with coworkers where it was like their perception of the whole women in tech issue was like off base and they didn't understand certain things, but like it wasn't ever that they were attacking me, and we were able to have a conversation about different perspectives about it, and kind of it was an educational moment.
It's very interesting because so I went to an all-girls school in Bangladesh, like up until 10th grade. So the thing about like being in an all-girls school is that I felt like gender was just like so like kind of like not a point of discussion. So I felt like I was a Safana before I was a woman, and just they were really gender was just like not really relevant to like the things I wanted to pursue, the things I were doing. But like once I guess I left that environment, you kind of become more aware of the social cues about like, oh, like because you're a woman, like you owe femininity to the world. And that's something I also heard from like a lot of the students we met through Wisdom. They said like, oh, when they went to like all girls schools, and there are a lot of all girls schools in Bangladesh, like they didn't really like have anything like particular to like they never thought about like how being a woman affects these things. Like they just were like fearless, and it was just like not something that impacted in the decision making. But once they go on to universities, which is co-ed, and like they have to partner with guys doing technical projects, and like or like participate in classrooms, like they kind of see the microaggressions. There are a lot of times the environment is that they see a lot of the macroaggressions where there would be just this like subtle tone like, oh, you're doing good enough, especially for a girl, or like or even the girls kind of like losing a lot of the confidence that, oh, I don't like, you guys do the drilling or the hands-on stuff, I'll do the report and presentation. So it's just interesting how like things changes and like how it's like relative to gender roles. And I just wanted to ask the fellows, do you want to share any of your experiences regarding this? Rifat or anyone, Antara? Like, oh well, okay. So moving on. Okay, they've written some articles. I'll share the articles they've written about this.
Sorry, Apu, I didn't get your question. Can you repeat it?
So the question is if you wanted to share any experiences about what we just talked about, like being a woman studying computer science and engineering in university, and like working with like men. Like, do you face any challenges? Is it
Yeah,
easy?
I had shared one of mine with you. If you want, you can talk to Megan in brief about that.
No,
I won't mind.
Okay, no, you should tell your story.
The thing was, last semester, I had a course, Artificial Intelligence. And in that course, on the first lab, my teacher thought as I am a girl, so I can't code myself. So either I am copying someone's or I am copying from net or internet. So he was asking me, did you do the whole code by yourself? I was literally surprised, and I asked him, yeah, I told him, yes, sir. So he was not even sure about that. So he sat down there to like judge me if really I have done it or not. So he started to ask me question like, make me understand about these lines. I actually literally started from saying what integer is, and from that I started explaining him every single word or letter in it, and he was like, okay, I got it, done. And I am not talking about the rest of the things of the whole semester, but at last I got 100 on 100 in that course, and he is one of my favorite teachers and I am one of his favorite students. So that's it. Like, I when the semester was ended, I told him that actually, sir, never do that, especially to a girl, because they are from the starting they are already demoralized. But if you talk to them like this, they will be more demoralized. So he actually told me sorry, and he told me that he will never do that again. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common thing. It's just like not being aware of your own unconscious biases and
Yeah.
how they affect other people. For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on to some of the questions they had. So they have some questions about like career specific, like something that we're getting a lot is like what skills should one have in landing internships at high tech companies? Like what criteria do they look at when they're looking through like intern applications? And in general, like I guess, how do you really present your best self through a resume and portfolios?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not a recruiter, so
Yeah.
I don't have like an official word on this. But I think in general, if you have a portfolio at all, that is awesome, because a lot of like students and new grads don't have portfolios. They've only done like classwork. So that, first of all, will catch anyone's attention and guarantee that you get looked at more closely. But I think it's also a lot about communicating your strengths well, and kind of showing that instead of just telling. So when you're like making your portfolio, don't just be like, I did this, and this. Like, kind of try to tell a story about how you did it and who you worked with and like your approach and how you collaborated. It just like that gives them a more well-rounded idea of what it would be like to work with you day to day. And I mean, everyone's looking for technical skill. I think Google's trying to do more to like not have bias towards people that go to a certain school or, you know, have a certain background. There's some new programs out to like correct like false negatives in the recruitment process. So I was actually an engineering resident, which is a 1-year program for students or for new grads. And you get to try different teams at Google before you settle into one team. And that was really awesome. But part of what the program was looking for was people with kind of a more interdisciplinary background and like really good communicators, because they're trying to kind of like they're trying to cast a wider net to get people who aren't just like technical geniuses, but like are really good in the workplace.
Yep. Awesome. So the next question we have is design specific. So Google is a company, or like, you know, like the design team within Google. Are there any particular technologies or tools you guys use for design or prototyping?
Yeah. It seems like a lot of the designers use Sketch.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Sketch?
I have heard of Sketch. You want to explain it to the fellows?
Sketch is just like a visual design tool that is really good for doing like digital user interfaces and like buttons and layout for digital kind of formats. I personally, I learned to do design in Illustrator, and I still use Adobe products for everything. I still use Illustrator for everything. But that's kind of because I never really wanted to do digital user interface design. If I was going to do some kind of like design or like kind of digital graphics stuff, I was doing something that was more illustration, more like logo design, like more freeform and less like focused on buttons and lists and UI kind of things. So I think both Adobe Illustrator and Sketch are really used a lot for making visual mocks. And then there's a lot of different tools out there that you can use to prototype, and it's kind of a wash as to like which one is the best, I think.
Yeah.
Framer is really popular, I think.
Great. So if you could go back to college now and knowing your interests and how they evolved, like how would you design the coursework / what are some things you would do if you could do college again?
Well, first of all, I feel like I really lucked out and I had a really great college curriculum in that it was really well-rounded, and I had great professors and I learned a lot, but I wasn't like spread too thin. Well, I mean, I was spread too thin, but not in a like insurmountable way. But I do wish my computer science classes had been better in that they had done more project-based stuff that was like stuff I could show to people that actually was different than what everybody else was making. And I wish that the classes had been smaller. But like, I really think like a traditional computer science curriculum is pretty good, really. Definitely want to make sure that you learn Android or learn like web development, because those kinds of things don't get taught in computer science curriculums. But I think the theoretical understanding is really important because it teaches you how to be a good learner, like we talked about before. Like understanding the fundamentals means that you can pick up any language quickly, whereas if you just like kind of learn how to write one language, you won't be able to adapt and learn as much.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions so far for Maegan?
Hello, I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Upon Preeti.
Oh, Preeti. Hi, Preeti.
Okay, Afia, you know me as Afia.
Yeah, no, I know. Afia and Preeti. Continue.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. As Maegan, when she has completed her double majors on journalism and computer science, it seems to be like these two fields are completely different, kind of different. So how did she link her linked on these two fields? I think I don't know. I didn't get her. Hello.
Yeah, Maegan. I guess she wants you to elaborate that a little bit more. The link between.
Yeah. Well, most fields these days are becoming more linked to technology just because of, you know, the way that the world is moving. Specifically in journalism, a lot of the most relevant journalism that's being done these days is done by people who can code. A lot of data visualization projects and like kind of advanced storytelling and VR storytelling, all of the things that we see in traditional tech industry stuff is being applied to journalism in a large way. So there's definitely a connect in industry, and academically, my journalism school is really on top of that connection and really trying to bridge the gap. So I actually had some classes in journalism school that taught code.
Yeah.
I was able to take those, and they actually counted towards my computer science degree and not my journalism degree. So there is really a strong connection, and they've added a dual degree, computer science and journalism, like now. But I'd say that definitely computer science is making its way into journalism pretty aggressively. And I just happened to be lucky to be at a school that was seeing that and taking action to teach its students about that.
Awesome. Speaking of like storytelling, and having like I guess storytelling to me means that whenever you design a project, it has like a strong purpose, and then everything is intentional. And I know within design, intentionality is big, and it's a word that's used a lot, thrown around a lot. And like I mentioned, so most of all of our fellows are designing a technical project and a community project. So when they're designing a technical project, how can they, I guess, first of all, like before even starting, like how can they design it better so that it really is fulfilling its purpose, and then every step of the way it's kind of has this intentionality to work towards that purpose. If you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I guess one thing that we do as designers is identify like key user journeys.
Yeah.
And lots of times you can do that by talking to people who would use the product. But you want to understand like what are like the top 5 things that a user might want to do when they're using the product, and really make sure that those top things, those top tasks are easy to do and it's obvious how to do them. And you can start doing that at the beginning with even just like paper sketches of your ideas for the design, and just putting them in front of people that will use the app, and just saying like, if it was like this, would that make sense? Or like, how would you try to accomplish this task given this like sketch of the UI? So you can start at the very beginning before you even have anything built with just sketches, and just keep talking to people.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for the fellows in general? Just the kind of the background they have and the uniqueness they bring. Like, how can they kind of be their best selves and really kind of like work to become better software engineers or techies in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think just exploring everything that's out in the world, which it seems like you guys are all doing already, and really kind of envisioning where you want to end up. I think that envisioning the future of like what you want to be working on and want to be in, for me, that was really powerful. Just kind of having a vision of that helped it come true, because everything I did was to further that goal,
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for Maegan? Because we are not getting any more questions on the Google Doc. Any more questions, you guys? This is a great opportunity to ask about anything.
Yeah, and you can also share my email address with everybody in case they want to follow up offline. I know sometimes it can be hard to talk in a large hangout.
Yeah, and just like coming up with questions right away. Right then. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait. Is anyone talking? Yeah. Okay, continue. Oh, okay. I guess. Did anyone have any questions? Well, I
Okay.
guess.
I wanted to ask one. What will be your advice for the person who are currently undergraduating on any engineering field, but want to do his or her second major on journalism? I think you got my question right.
Yeah. So just I'm not sure I heard, it's breaking up a little bit, but you're talking about what would I say to someone who wants to add a second major in journalism if they're doing technical stuff already?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, like I guess for them, if they're doing an interdisciplinary major, something like first major being computer science and second major being journalism. Like, do you have any advice specifically for people pursuing interdisciplinary majors?
Yeah, I guess try to do projects where those two intersect as much as possible, because that shows both majors to your work. And when you have a lot of projects where you can talk about the intersection of the two, that really shows that you have a deep understanding of both. So yeah, I think it's really great to have the diversity of interdisciplinary experience, but the points where those connect is really the most important, and the key part of, I think, the studying of both.
Should there be any specific courses for journalism if you're from engineering field?
It's hard to say, really. I think it really varies. But I think doing data visualization stuff, so where you take like a data set that you've found and you visualize it in a way that anyone can like see it and understand what's happening and interact with the data in a visual way instead of it just being like ugly kind of data. I think that's really like an exciting thing to look at, and I think doing projects like that would help you get into journalism fields as well as tech.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
No problem.
It seems like we're almost at the end of our Google Hangout session. And like I said, I'm going to be sharing Maegan's email address. So if you have any questions, if you have any advice that you want to do, you can like email to Maegan, or you can share it with me and I can relay the questions to Maegan. And once again, thank you so much, Maegan. We're going to be broadcasting this live. So we just did YouTube Live. This will be available on our YouTube channel. So this can reach more people. And yeah, we really, really appreciate the advice you've shared and the time that you've taken to connect to all of our fellows. Thank you so much.
No problem. I'm always happy to help. Good luck to everyone in all of your work and your projects. It's great to meet you.
Yeah. You too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good day.
You too, honey. Thanks.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.